Hi, thank you for joining us for this video. In this video, we're going to talk about the second draw PPP application. The SBA released that application form here at the start of this weekend, and we are anticipating that lenders are going to be able to provide that application to a borrower as we make our way through this week. As was the case for the first round PPP. The application that is provided by the SBA is a guide for the lenders to use. They have to utilize the rules and collect the information that is found in that application, but your lender's kind of application portal may look different than some of the material we're reviewing today, but the elements that they are asking for need to remain the same. So today, we're going to take a quick look at that eligibility again, just to make sure we're all on the same page. We've got the definition of receipts now because we talked about that quarter-over-quarter gross receipt reduction of 25%. So I want to make sure we clarify what those receipts are. We're going to look at some of the application elements in terms of what they are collecting, and we're going to do a quick review of some of the certifications that you need to make when you are applying. So first, who is eligible? As we had discussed before, you received an original PPP loan. You have exhausted those funds at the time you are making an application for a second draw. You have less than 300 employees, and that you have had a quarter-over-quarter reduction of gross receipts by 25% or more when comparing quarters in 2019 to quarters in 2020. Now, the amount that we're going to apply for, very similar, well, the exact same is what we did in the first draw PPP loans. The SBA, through their interim final rulings, made it clear that if you are going back to the same lender and you are using the same base period, which I would suggest that we use 2019, because in 2020 we did have some time, likely had some time, where we had our staff off of payroll. So the larger number is likely 2019. If you're going back to the same lender, the SBA has made it clear that they can use the documentation that you previously supplied. So nice to be able to kind of streamline that approach to getting to the loan amount if you're using the same lender. Now, another element of the application is they're going to ask for the purpose of this loan. While I want to make sure that we are still focused on cash compensation and payroll costs, remember that needs to be at least 60%, both of the original PPP and now the second draw PPP. But I don't see any harm in making sure that you really kind of check the box on all of these elements just in case we need to use it for non-payroll costs. Now, what is a receipt? The next part of that application goes into asking us to define that quarter by quarter. Well, a receipt really is all revenue, reduced by returns and allowances. So we're ultimately looking at our collections number, gross revenue number, not on production. Want to make sure we're accounting for those reductions and any returns. And again, quarter two of 2020 versus quarter two of 2019, for the vast majority of people watching this video, is going to be the quarter that allows us to qualify. Now, receipts do not include any capital gains or losses, and they do not include any pass-through on taxes. So predominantly there, that focuses on sales tax. Now, the one area that I'm glad that they clarified when they went through these receipt kind of definitions, the original PPP does not count as a receipt. So if you received your original PPP during quarter two, but our collections are down 25% or more compared to 2019, we're still in good shape. You do not need to include the original PPP as a part of this receipt figure. Now, they ask for the gross receipts and they ask for that reference quarter in 2019. Then they clarify in the guidance that if you are receiving a loan of greater than $150,000, and you'll know you're receiving that loan if your first loan was over $150,000, because the loan amounts will be the same. So if you are above $150,000, you're going to have to provide documentation to support the identified quarter. If you are below $150,000, you do not need to provide that documentation at the time that you are applying for a second draw PPP loan. However, keep in mind, you are going to have to provide that documentation before or when you apply for forgiveness for this second draw PPP loan. Highly suggest, even if you are below $150,000, Go back into your accounting statements, take a look at your collections, make sure that you hit that qualifying amount of that 25% reduction. We don't want to be surprised by moving before we look in terms of this application. But know that you don't have to provide that documentation at the time of application if you are below $150,000. Now, similar to the first PPP loan, you're going to have to make a good deal of certifications. A lot of those are kind of just recertifying what we already applied for in the first draw. Keep in mind, one of those elements is that this is an economic, or that economic uncertainties make this loan a necessity. Now, I think that 25% reduction in terms of gross receipts is a test that allows us to really kind of identify and quantify that economic uncertainty does make this a necessity for the business. But I also know a lot of practices, your collections are down here in the fourth quarter as patients are pushing treatment forward given what's happening with COVID numbers. And then for general dentists, where we've kind of experienced a barbell of hygiene because of all those hygiene appointments that we had in the third quarter catching up from being shut down, that the fourth quarter is looking a little bit light. We also don't know if there's going to be any further rounds of having to close our practices. All those lead me to say, okay, economic uncertainty is certainly there as we're kind of looking forward here in 2021. Some of the new certifications that I just want to make sure you're aware of. I don't think that we're going to have any problems certifying to them, but you do need to certify that revenue reduction. You do need to certify that you have exhausted the original PPP, that you're going to use this for allowable purposes, that you're not going to apply for a second draw PPP loan, that you did not apply for the shuttered venue operator grant, and then that you don't have any owners that are citizens of the People's Republic of China. You don't have any owners that are part of the government, the federal government's executive branch, and you are not going to have to apply for the foreign agent registration, and that you're not going to use these dollars on lobbying activities. So, certifications I think are easy to make, but I always want to make sure you're aware of what you are signing off to as you approach this second draw PPP loan. As always, please let me know any questions you have. If there's anything you specifically want to see us unpack in a future video, I'd love to hear that information as well. And always feel free to kind of shoot this video off to others in our community who you think might find it helpful. Thank you so much for your time today. Hope you have a wonderful week.